Your mind is running right now. You know it is. Thoughts you did not choose. Worries you did not invite. A voice inside your skull that comments on everything, judges everything, and drags you back to conversations that ended years ago, failures that happened last week, fears about things that have not happened yet. You are not living in the present moment. You are hostage inside your own head. And the worst part? You do not even know how long it has been this way. There was a man who ruled the entire known world, 5 million square miles of territory, over 70 million people, absolute power over every life and every law. And every single night, before he slept, he wrote in a private journal to remind himself of one thing, that his mind was the only kingdom that actually mattered. His name was Marcus Aurelius, and what he wrote, alone, for no audience, in war camps on the edge of the empire, may be the most important thing ever put on paper about what it actually means to be a human being who chooses their life instead of being chosen by it. And somewhere across 2,000 years and the distance between an emperor's tent and a cinematic underworld of assassins, John Wick lived every single word of it. Picture the man. His wife has just died. Helen Wick, the woman he completed an impossible task for, the woman he left the deadliest profession in the world for, the woman who was his entire reason for becoming someone other than Baba Yaga, is gone. Taken by illness, no enemy to fight, no bullet to fire back, nothing to hunt, and nothing to conquer. Just the silence of a house that still has her mug beside his on the counter, her side of the bathroom unlit and untouched, her smell still in the sheets. John Wick sits in that silence. He does not scream. He does not break things. He does not reach for a bottle or a phone or any of the 10,000 distractions a person uses to avoid the raw, unbearable weight of reality. He sits in it, fully. He feels every inch of it without running. That is the first secret of the Emperor. The John Wick franchise wiki describes John as a very serious and stoic individual who rarely spoke more than necessary, preferring actions over words, never wasting words. Both Vigo and Abram Tarasov described him as a man of focus, commitment, and sheer will. Those are not action hero words. Those are the words of Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, written almost 2,000 years ago in a military tent on the frontier of the Roman Empire, breathing through the body of a retired assassin in 21st century New York. Today, this video is going to go deeper than inspiration, deeper than motivation. We are going to show you exactly what the Emperor wrote, not for the world, but for himself, and how John Wick, in every scene of every film, demonstrates that the person who masters their own mind is the most dangerous, most free, most fully alive person in any room they walk into. Marcus Aurelius was born in 121 CE in Rome. His father died when he was young. He was raised by his grandfather. He was educated by the finest minds of the ancient world, philosophers, rhetoricians, lawyers, and at a young age, Emperor Hadrian noticed something in him that no other boy had. Not ambition, not political cunning, not ruthlessness, a quality of attention, a quality of inner stillness that Hadrian had never encountered in anyone destined for power. He arranged for Marcus to be adopted by his successor, Antoninus Pius, and trained as the future emperor of Rome. Marcus Aurelius officially took the throne in 161 CE and ruled until his death in 180. According to the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, his 19-year reign was troubled by nearly constant war, a devastating plague, possible infidelity, an attempted coup by one of his closest allies, repeated military campaigns across Asia Minor, Syria, Egypt, Greece, and Austria, and a rapidly depleting treasury. He ruled the largest empire the world had ever seen, and he was, by every historical account, one of the most psychologically tortured, most privately struggling, most deeply human emperors who ever lived. And every night, in war camps, in tents, on the edge of battles, he wrote in a private journal that he never intended anyone to read. He called it Ta Eis Houghton, roughly translated to himself. Notes not for history, not for posterity, not for reputation. Notes to train his own mind, to remind himself again and again of the standards he had set for himself, to correct his own thinking before it could corrupt his actions. The Daily Stoic describes this practice as spiritual exercises, reminders designed to make him humble, patient, empathetic, generous, and strong in the face of whatever he was dealing with. He was the most powerful man in the known world, and every night he wrote down the same message to himself. Your mind is the only thing you actually own. Master it, or it will master you. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, Book 4, the things you think about determine the quality of your mind. Your soul takes on the color of your thoughts. Read that again. The color of your thoughts, not the events of your life, not your circumstances, not what has been done to you, or taken from you, or denied to you. The thoughts you choose to dwell on, circle back to, and build a story around. Those are the architecture of who you become. The Daily Stoic notes that Marcus Aurelius returned to the same themes over and over in his journals, not because he had mastered them, but because they were the hardest things, the places where his mind kept trying to slide back into resentment, anxiety, vanity, distraction. He wrote them down as reminders because he knew, without the reminder, the mind defaults, always, to the reactive, to the noisy, to the color that circumstance hands it, rather than the color it chooses for itself. John Wick speaks approximately 380 words across the first 3 films combined. Surrounded, outgunned, $7 million price on his head, and his mind is so controlled, so quiet, so completely occupied by the present moment, rather than the catastrophe his thoughts could construct from the situation, that he can think with perfect clarity. He can see the only 2 real options. He can speak the one sentence that changes the entire room. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Does the mind ever cause herself disturbance? Does she bring fears and passions upon herself? The mind is in her own nature self-sufficient, and must create her wants before she can feel them. The mind creates its own disturbance, not the situation, the mind. And the mind that has been trained, the mind that a man sits with in silence every night, the way Marcus sat with his journal, the way John Wick sits with his grief, that mind does not manufacture the catastrophe. It just sees what is actually there and acts from that seeing." Marcus Aurelius wrote the single most repeated, most quoted, most applied line in all of Stoicism in one clean sentence in Meditations. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. His house is gone. In the rubble, Santino has destroyed the last physical place that held any trace of Helen. The altar, as one essay describes it, where John might have prayed to and mourned his wife. Gone, in an instant, over a debt John tried to pretend did not exist. John Wick cannot control that his house was blown up. He cannot reach back in time and undo the moment he agreed to the impossible task that created the marker. He cannot make Santino d'Antonio unexist. He cannot make the high table irrelevant. He cannot unlove Helen or unfeel the grief or unfight the war that his life has become. None of that is in his control. What is in his control? His next decision, the direction he faces when he stands up from the rubble, the clarity with which he assesses what is actually available to him, the quality of the mind he brings to the problem of being alive when everything external has been stripped down to nothing. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations about what the Daily Stoic calls the 3 disciplines of Stoicism, distilled into this: see things for what they are, do what we can, endure and bear what we must. See things for what they are. John standing in his destroyed house, not adding a dramatic narrative to it, just seeing it clearly. Do what we can. He goes to Winston. He discusses his options. He moves. Endure and bear what we must. He honors the marker, even though it costs him everything, because that is what is real, and the mind that is mastered does not waste energy arguing with what is real. The Big Think's analysis of Stoicism and meditations puts it this way: bad things will happen to you, it's life. However, you have the power to overcome these events through reason and the understanding that you can only really be harmed by your own mental processes. Only be harmed by your own mental processes, not by the explosion, not by the bounty, not by the marquise or the high table or the excommunicado. The external events are first arrows, real, painful, unavoidable. The mental spiral that turns them into identity, into permanent despair, into the story that you are broken and the world is against you specifically. That is the choice. And John Wick does not make it. Marcus Aurelius wrote what Ryan Holiday later turned into a best-selling book called The Obstacle is the Way. The original line from Meditations reads, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This is possibly the most misunderstood principle in all of Stoic philosophy. People hear it as motivational, as a nice frame for hard times, as the kind of thing you write on a poster. It is not a poster. It is an operating instruction for a mind that has been trained to transform resistance into fuel. John Wick is declared excommunicado with 1 hour before the bounty activates. $14 million on his head, every service suspended, every ally legally forbidden from helping him, the entire architecture of the only world he knows turned against him in 60 minutes. What does he do? He does not sit and grieve the loss of his continental access. He does not spend his 60 minutes in resentment toward Winston for declaring the excommunicado, or Santino for creating the situation, or the high table for existing. Every single minute of that hour is used. Every obstacle is processed immediately as a problem to solve rather than a grievance to feel. He goes to the Russian bookstore, a coin, a book, a weapon. Obstacle transformed into resource. He goes to the director, his debt, her debt, a transaction. Obstacle transformed into passage. He crosses an ocean using a marker. Every wall becomes a door the moment his mind stops treating it as a wall. Marcus Aurelius wrote this not as philosophy, but as practical instruction to himself, a man who faced 19 years of nearly continuous warfare, plague, betrayal, and political crisis. Ryan Holiday's analysis of this principle notes that it was written during military campaigns, in the middle of crises, not after them, in calm reflection. Marcus was writing to himself in real time, on the edge of the battle, reminding his own mind, the obstacle is not the problem. Your response to the obstacle is the only thing that matters, and this is where the Emperor's secret separates from simple positive thinking. Marcus was not pretending the obstacles weren't real. He wasn't telling himself everything would be fine. He was training his mind to process resistance as raw material rather than stop sign, to see the wall and immediately ask, what does this wall make possible that the open road did not? John Wick's entire 4-film journey is the living answer to that question, asked and answered every single time he is backed into a corner, with a pencil, with 7 bullets, with a blood oath, with a dual clause buried in centuries-old rules that everyone else forgot existed. Marcus Aurelius wrote something in Meditations that most modern self-help content skips entirely because it is too uncomfortable for the version of ambition our culture currently sells. He wrote, "Do not act as if you will live 10,000 years. Death hangs over you. While you live, while it is in your power, be good." The Stoics called this practice Memento Mori. Remember that you will die. not as morbidity, not as pessimism, as the single most clarifying, most liberating, most life-organizing truth available to a human mind. Because the person who has genuinely made peace with their own death, who has looked at it directly, thought about it clearly, and incorporated it into their daily awareness, is the freest person alive. They are also the most dangerous because they have nothing to lose that fear could use against them. The John Wick fandom wiki records that when John asked Winston to make arrangements for him before the duel, he requested one specific thing for if he did not survive: to be buried next to Helen with the epitaph, "Loving husband, not Baba Yaga, not the boogeyman, not the legend, the myth, the most feared assassin in the history of organized crime. Loving husband." That is what John Wick wanted on his stone. That is what he was trying to protect. And the fact that he could say it out loud, request it, plan for it, hold it as the defining truth of who he wanted to be remembered as, means he had looked at his own death directly and decided what it meant. Those who cling to death live. John paraphrases the Japanese daimyo Uesugi Kenshin, but the idea runs through every tradition that has ever produced genuine courage. The person who has made peace with dying is the one who actually gets to live, because they are not spending every waking moment protecting something they are terrified to lose. They are using every waking moment in the service of what actually matters. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Think of yourself as dead. You have lived your life. Now take what's left and live it properly." John Wick, on those steps in Paris at the end of chapter 4, watching the sun come up, has lived this every single day for 4 films. The man who sleeps in war camps, who writes in journals, who makes peace with his own ending before the battle begins. That is not a character trait invented for cinema. That is the Emperor's oldest and most liberating secret, breathing through the body of a man who chose a fight he knew might kill him, because the thing on the other side of the fight was worth dying for. The Marquis Vincent de Gramont is the most Machiavellian villain in the entire John Wick franchise, and his attack on the Continental is designed specifically to do one thing: not just destroy a building, but destroy the internal architecture that John Wick relies on. Remove every external support, take away the Continental's protection, Karen's friendship, Winston's alliances, the sanctity of the rules that had always given John some structure to operate within. Strip him externally, completely. Marcus Aurelius studied under a philosopher named Epictetus, a man who had been born a slave, had literally nothing external to call his own, and who developed the most radical internal philosophy in the history of Western thought. Epictetus taught that there is an inner citadel, a fortress inside the self that no external event can breach if the person has built it correctly. The philosopher Pierre Hadot called this concept central to Marcus Aurelius's entire practice. Marcus wrote, "Look inwards, for you have a lasting fountain of happiness at home that will always bubble up if you will but dig for it." A lasting fountain, inside, not dependent on the Continental's protections or the High Table's mercy or any external structure's continued existence. The collider analysis of John Wick. Chapter 4 describes the Marquis as understanding that John Wick has become a beacon of hope for all those beneath the High Table who want to leave the underworld. He is not just a threat to be eliminated. He is an idea. And you cannot kill an idea by blowing up a building, because the idea lives in the inner citadel, which no external force, no matter how powerful, no matter how well armed, no matter how many mercenaries with armor-piercing ammunition, can ever actually reach. The inner citadel is not hardness. It is not the suppression of emotion. Marcus Aurelius wept for his children. He lost several of them in childhood. He mourned his teachers, his friends, his co-emperor. The Meditations is full of grief and doubt and private fear. The inner citadel is not the absence of feeling. It is the presence of a foundation beneath the feeling that cannot be moved by any external storm. The feeling passes through. The foundation remains. John Wick loses Karen. He loses the Continental. He has already lost Helen, Daisy, his home, his freedom, and his anonymity. And he keeps moving, not because he does not feel it, because beneath the feeling, beneath every loss, there is a quiet, unbreakable thing. The inner citadel, the place Marcus Aurelius built every night in his journal, the place John Wick built in 19 years of discipline so total that not even death could take it from him before he chose to give it. Marcus Aurelius was not born a Stoic emperor. He was made one, night by night, exercise by exercise, journal entry by journal entry, for decades before he held any power at all. The Amazon description of his meditations notes that his teacher Junius Rusticus introduced him to the works of Epictetus when Marcus was still a student, and that he began his philosophical practice long before it was useful to him publicly. He practiced privately, repeatedly, for years before he ever needed it under pressure. The Daily Stoic describes his nightly practice as spiritual exercises, reminders designed to make him humble, patient, empathetic, generous, and strong in the face of whatever he was dealing with. You need to constantly remind yourself of the standards you have set for yourself, who you aspire to be, and these are especially important when you come short. The John Wick Fandom Wiki describes John's training as something that began in childhood under the director of the Ruska Roma, continued through his years as a Marine, was deepened through his career as the world's most lethal assassin, and was never stopped even in retirement. The suit tailor in Chapter 2 explains that the custom suit is layered with body armor, a weapon, a shield, and a uniform of identity all at once. His weapons caches are buried across the city and under his own basement floor. His network of markers and alliances was maintained through years of showing up, doing favors, being reliable, long before he needed any of it back. The practice is the preparation. The practice is the performance. They are not two different things. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Mastery of reading and writing requires a master. Still, more so life. Life requires mastery the way a weapon requires calibration. Daily, without skipping. Not when you feel like it. Not when it is comfortable. Every day, the practice, the reminder, the return to the standard." The Daily Stoic describes reading meditations not as a one-time event, but as something that rewards rereading across a lifetime. Because each time you return, you find something different because you have changed. The practice is never finished. The mind is never finally mastered. It is only ever being mastered, daily, imperfectly, with the same commitment Marcus brought to that tent every night, to sit with himself honestly and ask whether the man who went to sleep was any closer to the man he was trying to become. John Wick tapes his weapons before every fight with the same deliberateness that Marcus Aurelius picked up his quill before every night of writing. Both men know the victory happens in the preparation. The fight is just the reveal. Meditations was never meant to be published. Marcus Aurelius titled it Ta Eis Heauton, to himself. He was writing private notes, personal reminders, the confession of a man who had absolute external power and was fighting every single day to maintain internal sovereignty over himself. Wikipedia notes that the book was first published in 1558, more than 1,000 years after Marcus's death, found in a manuscript from a private library, and released into the world that Marcus never imagined it reaching. It has been in continuous print ever since. Chinese Premier Wen Jiabao has reportedly reread it on countless occasions. It appears in Steinbeck's East of Eden and John Stuart Mill's On Liberty. Marcus Aurelius appears in the film Gladiator as the old and wise emperor at the beginning, the man who tried to build a Rome that could outlast any single person's ambition. The Gregory Hayes translation, considered the best by the Daily Stoic, describes the book as practical philosophy embodied. You cannot read this book and not come away with a phrase or a line that will be helpful to you the next time you are in trouble. And here is what makes it different from every other philosophy book, every other self-help system, every other framework for thinking about the mind and life and power. Marcus Aurelius was not writing prescriptions for other people. He was writing prescriptions for himself. A man who struggled, who got angry, who felt the pull of vanity and resentment and distraction and fear, who wrote down the antidotes for his own specific poisons night after night, because he had learned that the mind, left untended, defaults to darkness. He wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." John Wick never argues about it either. He is not a saint. The film franchise is not a morality play. He kills hundreds of people across 4 films. But within his own code, within the standards he set for himself in the deepest place he lives, he is utterly, completely, unbreakably consistent. He does not lie to get out of the marker. He does not kill innocents. He does not abandon people he owes. He does not pretend to be something he is not. He is one thing, completely. In the same way, Marcus Aurelius tried to be one thing, not perfect, but honest, and never lying to himself about the gap between who he was and who he intended to be. That gap is where the work lives, for emperors and assassins and every ordinary person navigating the gap between the life they have been handed and the life they are capable of choosing. 222 steps. John Wick climbs them after everything. After the Arc de Triomphe, after the cars and the bullets and the duel and the marquise and the 4 films and the entire weight of a life lived at the absolute edge of what a human body and mind can sustain. He climbs them the way Marcus Aurelius sat down with his journal every night at the end of another day of war and plague and betrayal and empire. Not because it was easy, not because he felt ready, not because someone was watching or applauding or keeping score, because that is who he had decided to be. And the decision, made once in the private interior where no one else could reach it, was enough to move the feet even when the body could not. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." John Wick's soul spent 4 films dyed by one thought, one name, one face, one decision made in a hospital room years before the first film begins, that if he could just get out, just live a quiet life, just be the man that Helen saw when she looked at him, then all the rest of it would have been worth it. He never stopped thinking that thought, not through the excommunicado, not through the desert, not through the betrayals and the losses and the 222 steps. That thought, that single, unbreakable, privately held purpose, was the color of his soul, and it took him step by bloody step, all the way to the only ending that was ever going to feel like peace. The Emperor's Secret, the one Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself every night for 19 years of power in a world that was trying to take everything from him, is not a strategy. It is not a tactic. It is not a productivity system or a morning routine or a leadership framework. It is this: 5 words written 2,000 years ago for no one but himself. You have power over your mind, not over the high table, not over who your enemies are or what they take from you, or how many arrows come from how many directions, not over illness or time or the people you love or the moment they leave, not over the bounty on your head or the ruins of your house or the 222 steps between you and the sunrise. Over your mind, only, entirely, always. The person who understands this actually understands it, not as a quote on a phone wallpaper, but as the lived, practiced, daily, fought-for reality of how they move through the world. that person cannot be broken by any external force, because there is nothing external that can reach what is actually theirs. Your mind is the empire, every empire, the only one that ever actually mattered, and you have been given complete sovereignty over it. Sovereignty that no high table, no marquis, no loss, no failure, no bounty, no wall, no war has the authority to revoke. The question Marcus Aurelius asked himself every single night, in the tent, by candlelight, on the edge of another impossible situation, and the question John Wick answered with every step of those 222 stairs is the same question available to you right now, today. What color are you choosing to dye your soul? Because every thought you allow to stay, every narrative you choose to build around what has happened to you, every story you tell yourself about who you are and what you deserve and what is possible, that is the dye. That is the choice. That is the secret the emperor never stopped reminding himself of until the night he had no more nights left. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Now, go find it. If this video changed something in how you see yourself and your own mind, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe, like it, because this channel exists to go into the depth that most content is too afraid to reach. The emperor wrote to himself every night. The least we can do is show up once a week. I will see you in the next one.